As the moon cast its pale glow over the desolate desert, Mike's car broke down on an empty stretch of road with no cell signal and miles of arid landscape surrounding him. He decided to walk towards what he hoped was the distant town. The silence of the desert was eerie, broken only by the crunch of gravel under his boots. The moonlight flickered through the clouds, casting strange shadows that danced and shifted as Mike walked. The stillness was unsettling, and he felt as if eyes were watching him from the darkness. He quickened his pace, trying to push away the growing sense of dread. Suddenly he heard a distant, haunting melody, soft and melancholic, drifting through the air. "Hello," he called out, but his voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness. The melody grew louder, more haunting, compelling him to follow it. He followed the sound, stumbling through the sand and rocks. As he neared a dilapidated, abandoned gas station, the music stopped abruptly. Mike stopped in his tracks, heart pounding. "Is anyone there?" he shouted, but only the echo of his voice answered. With a growing sense of unease, Mike entered the gas station. The place was frozen in time, with old dusty pumps and a cracked, flickering neon sign. The music resumed, now an eerie, discordant tune coming from the dark interior of the station. Inside, the air was cold and stale. A broken jukebox stood in the corner, its lights dim and its music box spinning. As Mike approached it, the music stopped again, and he noticed an old, dusty photograph on the wall. It showed a group of people, their faces obscured by shadow, all wearing expressions of eternal fear. A gust of wind howled through the broken windows, extinguishing the only light source, a single flickering bulb. The temperature plummeted, and Mike felt an icy breath on his neck. He spun around, but saw nothing. The chilling melody started again, this time right behind him. Panic set in as Mike turned to find a dark figure emerging from the shadows. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, its voice a sinister echo. The figure advanced, and Mike stumbled back, his hands scraping against the rough wall. He could barely see as the figure's presence grew more oppressive. The music swelled into a deafening crescendo, and the figure's eyes burned with an otherworldly glow. Mike tried to flee, but the figure's grip was icy and unyielding. "You'll stay with us forever," it hissed. The last thing Mike saw was the figure's glowing eyes before darkness enveloped him completely. The haunting melody was the final sound he heard as it consumed him. Samantha's old pickup truck spluttered to a halt as she navigated the remote, overgrown path through the forest. As twilight descended, the dense canopy of trees swallowed the remaining light, leaving her in near total darkness. Her phone showed no signal, and with the nearest town miles away, she had no choice but to venture into the woods in search of help. The forest was thick and silent, save for the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Samantha's footsteps seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet, each snap of a twig making her jump. She pressed on, her breath coming in quick, anxious gasps. Then from the depths of the forest, she heard a soft, rhythmic thumping, like distant drums. The sound was faint but persistent, pulling her deeper into the woods. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. The only response was the thumping, growing louder and more insistent. As Samantha continued, the sound seemed to circle around her, never quite revealing its source. She pushed through the underbrush, the thumping now accompanied by a low, mournful chant. Her heart raced as she stumbled upon an old, forgotten clearing, dominated by a large, ancient tree with twisted branches. The chanting grew louder, resonating through the clearing. Samantha felt a cold chill as a faint, Ghostly light began to emanate from beneath the tree's roots. She approached cautiously, the chanting intensifying. She crouched by the glowing light, revealing an old, dusty box, partially buried in the dirt. Before she could open it, the chanting abruptly stopped, and an oppressive silence fell over the clearing. Samantha's pulse quickened as the temperature dropped sharply. She could see her breath misting in the air. Suddenly a cold wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the ghostly light and plunging her into darkness. The chanting resumed, but now it was right beside her. Samantha spun around, but saw nothing. The thumping noise grew louder, more chaotic. Her fear mounted as she felt an icy presence close behind her and an inexplicable pressure on her chest. She fumbled to get up, her hands clawing at the dark. In the pitch black, she felt the pressure ease and heard a whisper, faint but clear. "You've disturbed what should have stayed buried." The voice was chilling and carried an edge of ancient sorrow. The ground beneath her seemed to shift, and Samantha stumbled, falling to her knees. She tried to find her way back to the truck, but the path had vanished. The whisper grew louder, almost unbearable. "Now, you belong to the forest." The last thing Samantha heard was the chant rising into a frenzied crescendo before everything went silent. She was enveloped by an all-consuming darkness, the ancient trees' whisper, the final sound she would ever hear. As Ryan drove along the remote forest road late at night, his engine suddenly sputtered and died. Stranded in an isolated area with no cell signal and miles from the nearest town, he had no choice but to venture into the woods in search of help. The darkness in the forest grew quickly as he walked, the sparse moonlight only deepening the shadows. Each step seemed to echo in the stillness, and a cold breeze whispered through the trees, adding to his unease. Ryan quickened his pace, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread. Then a strange, musty odor filled the air, like the scent of an old, forgotten room. Through the growing haze, he spotted the outline of a dilapidated cabin. With little choice, Ryan approached and decided to investigate. Inside the cabin was eerily silent except for the creaking of the wooden floorboards. In one corner there was an old chest resting on the ground. Ryan struggled with the heavy lid and managed to open it, revealing a decayed garment and a faded photograph. The photo showed a group of people in old-fashioned clothing, their faces etched with profound sadness. As Ryan examined the photograph, a low, unsettling hum began to fill the air. Suddenly, a cold wind extinguished the faint light coming through the cracks, plunging the cabin into darkness. Panicked, Ryan stumbled around, trying to find his way out. The humming grew louder, more insistent, now accompanied by eerie whispers. Ryan felt an icy presence close behind him, and the air grew colder. He fumbled in the dark, but the whispers became overwhelming, echoing around him. "Why did you come here, Ryan?" The whispers rose into a frenzied cacophony, and Ryan's fear mounted. He tried to escape, but the cabin's door remained shut tight. The voices grew louder, more menacing, and Ryan was engulfed by an impenetrable darkness. The last thing he heard was the chaotic crescendo of the whispers before everything went silent. The oppressive void swallowed him completely,